says eat your veggies, but most of my shirts are vegan, but this one, because we're going to talk about the easiest way to eat fruits and veggies. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is John Kohler, and he has an amazing story of recovering from a life-threatening illness. But more than that, he has like the coolest YouTube channel with probably the most videos of anybody I've ever seen about a subject that is really important, which is ways to eat more fruits and vegetables. And I didn't realize that he was the man behind Discount Juicers. And I told him before the show, oh, gosh, I bought a lot of juicers from that because it's just got great prices. But what I really love about him is his unbiased reviews. And once I introduce him, I'll tell you the story about what made me want to talk to him even more. Please welcome John Kohler. It's so nice to see you almost in person.
Hi, AJ. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate your show a lot because actually I refer to it to learn about new people just like me that I was not aware about and learn what they're doing and enhance my knowledge about eating a nutrient-dense plant-based diet.
Right. So I know we didn't maybe officially meet at the food show in Orange County, but I know I saw you there. It was probably 20 years ago. You have not aged a minute, and I'm sure your diet has something to do with that. But what I love about your videos, John, is I really feel like you're very honest with your reviews. And what happened is last November, I hosted a summit called the GI Health Summit. And one of the doctors, who's a plant-based gastroenterologist in Washington, D.C., her name is Dr. Janess Laster, was telling me something I didn't know, that some of the plant milks that you buy in boxes, not all of them, have something in them called emulsifiers that apparently are not good for you in general, but especially not good for your GI tract, especially if you have some problems, which I have had in the past. And so I said, you know, I went to culinary school. I know how to make my own milk. I can do that. And you know, I wanted to research it even further. So I went to your channel and you had these comparisons of different machines. And that is really where I first heard about the Nutri-Milk machine. And that is what got me to want to get it over the other machines, was because of your reviews. So thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. And that's, you know, my goal is to just, there's many appliances and I mean, I sell many of them and some of them I don't sell, but I always try to put an honest review out. And even when I just make my other videos, because also besides the videos I make on the equipment that allow people to eat the best and more, you know, fruits and vegetables and other plant foods. I also teach people how to grow their own food at my gardening channel, Growing Your Greens, and also have been into eating a raw plant-based diet now, fruit and vegetable dominated for the last 26 years that I teach at OK Raw. So I have combined, like, I don't even know, 2,600 videos. I probably work harder than most other plant-based people to put out 3 videos a week. I mean, actually, you probably put out more.
I put out one, but here's the thing. I'm not editing mine, so it's a little easier, but I have put out one a day I've done, I think your show like 5, let me look at what number you are. Since the pandemic began, your show 515. So in the last.
That's impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, it's amazing to me because I was raw for a couple of years and I couldn't sustain it. So I'm in awe, and really for people that can do it, but to do it for as long as you've done it is amazing.
I mean, actually, more recently, I started introducing some heat processed foods, is how I like to call it, to enhance my microbiome and get even healthier than just being raw. Because even a vegan diet or any kind of diet you're on could be quite limiting. So, like, I want to try to unlimit my raw vegan diet because it's all about, you know, what are your goals? I mean, if your number one goal is to save animals, you could eat, you know, vegan junk food and save animals. And hey, that's great. I would totally agree with you if you guys want to do that. But my goal specifically is to have the highest level of health, anti-aging, longevity, and have the performance I had when I was younger, as well as the same weight, which I believe I'm pretty much doing fairly well.
Well, I think maybe not everyone is familiar with your story, but you had a very serious disease. I know somebody that had this disease and almost died. You had viral spinal meningitis. How the heck did you get that as such a young man just out of college?
I have no idea. So I was playing broom ball with my fraternity brothers at the time, and I just ended up getting like flu-like symptoms, and then getting sick and getting hospitalized. And I just thought I had the flu. And then I woke up in the hospital because I literally was passed out by the time I got there. And the doctor said, you might not make it out of the hospital alive. We have no treatment for you, basically is what they said. And I'm like, this is not supposed to happen until I'm like 50. I mean, I was younger then, of course. It's not even supposed to happen when you're 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, from my understanding now. You could disease proof yourself, literally, as Dr. Joel Fuhrman likes to say, by, you know, eating a diet rich and high in phytonutrients, which is something that I want everybody watching today to, you know, amp up your phytonutrient levels whether it's in a juice form, whether it's in a vacuum blended smoothie form, whether it's in wild blueberries from Trader Joe's. Do one thing today to take your health up or your diet up just one notch. That's all I'm asking. You don't have to go raw. You don't have to do all these crazy things I do, because most people are not. I mean, I'm so into this. I even grow my own food so that I could have higher quality food than the next guy. And not many people, that are plant-based, that I'm aware of, like, do this on such a big level, because literally my whole backyard, every spot has food growing.
So what was your diet like before you went to the all raw diet, and how quickly after getting this diagnosis did you change your diet?
So I got the diagnosis, and then at that point, there was no medical treatment for me. So I could only say I'm here today through higher powers, is what I like to say. And so I was given a second chance. But when I was in the hospital, AJ, I really thought about what's really important to me. Like, even if I had all the money in the world, there's famous rich people that lose their lives all the time because of a health condition or health crisis or health opportunity, as I like to call them, because they didn't focus on specializing in their health. They focused on making money, which, hey, great. Money is great, but you can't, cheat, buy yourself out of sickness. I've literally spent, the last 26 years of my life focusing on how can I be the healthiest possible, and more importantly, share this with others, because I learned that, without your health, you don't have anything at a young age. So I was really glad I got this. I wasn't glad at the time, but I'm glad looking back on it. It's probably the most valuable thing that has ever happened to me. And the other thing to me is that, if money isn't the most important, we're not supposed to just wake up and work and make all this money. What should we be doing in our lives? And I thought that, hey, man, if I get out of here, I'm going to, do my part to help my neighbor, help that fellow man, and teach people what I've learned, because I'm glad to, be alive today and experience this thing we call life.
So what did you learn? And how did you know back then what to do?
Oh, it was difficult. So there was no internet back then, and basically I really didn't know what to do. So my diet before I got into all this and how I got sick was, I thought I ate pretty healthy. I didn't eat red meat. I didn't drink alcohol at that point in my life. And I read my ingredient labels and tried not to eat things with, like, big, names I didn't know. And I didn't drink, soda and all those kind of things. But I was just, a college guy and eating maybe a little bit healthier than the average person, but not really. And that just wasn't good enough, because later I found out I had what's called complement immune deficiency, which is what the doctor said. Basically, it's a autoimmune kind of condition where your immune system is not that strong. And this was not a big surprise to me, because I also, as a child, had asthma and allergies and a dry skin condition, eczema, which are all also kind of autoimmune style conditions. And basically what I learned over the many years is that, there's like this thing called epigenetics, and, our genes load the gun, but our lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so, even if I don't have the best genes, if I eat a bad diet, then I'm really screwed. But if I eat really well and eat phytonutrient rich foods and rich in all different kinds of fiber, have a good microflora and microbiome, then I could overcompensate for my bad genes, or my genes will autocorrect themselves, or however that works, because I'm not a scientist, nor am I a doctor.
I think I heard you say in an interview I listened to you that you weren't breastfed, and I wasn't either. And I also suffered from asthma and allergy, and that's just so important.
I believe it is. And I was actually quite saddened that I was not breastfed as a child, because my mom, it was just I wouldn't suckle, and and they had like the formulas and all these things, and it was just easier for my mom. So please, ladies, if you have children, please breastfeed. It's so important to get these, beneficial microbes in us, especially when we're young. So that's why I've been trying to overcompensate for that through diet and other, measures in my life. And at first, when I learned about this, AJ, I had no clue what I was going to do. I knew that I had a weak immune system and I needed to do something. And the doctors wanted to give me immunization so that I wouldn't come down with this spinal meningitis again. And I'm like, but then he's like, oh, you could get any other kind of disease and it could take you out. Kind of like the extreme situation is like The Boy in the Bubble, the John Travolta movie from the 1970s, where he has to live in this bubble. Now, I'm not as bad as the guy in the bubble, but I'm not like a normal person, to be like somewhere in between, right? And I knew that I needed to build my immune system. And after I left the hospital and got out, through higher powers, I knew I needed to build my immune system, and I had no idea how to do that. Luckily, at the time, that was when Jay Cordich, the Juice Man, was on the infomercial. and he had his juicing infomercial, and I just heard one thing stuck out to me to this day in his infomercial that says juicing will build your immune system. And I'm like, wait a second, I have a weak immune system. I need to build my immune system. I need to be juicing. So basically, I mean, long story short, I started juicing, and then he talked about, you know, how eating raw foods, and how he said in his cassette tapes that come with the program that dates me a little bit, the one thing that prematurely ages you faster than anything else is cooked food. Don't put cooked foods in your body. Now, I don't know if I'd agree with that statement now, but he did have a point that, you know, some cooked foods like fried foods will age you faster than anything else. Other, you know, like, you know, pressure cooked or steamed or boiled foods, probably not going to age you super fast, although it depends what you're cooking that way. You know, but I'm like, okay, so now I'm going to just ramp up and eat the best I can to provide my body all the different nutrients and flood my body with phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals that most people are not getting, so that my body could have all the components it needs to run properly. Like if they have a big factory and they're making cars and they don't have rubber, that's great. They can make most of the car, except they can't make the tires and maybe some bushings or gaskets or something. And then they can't make a car. The car's not going to come out properly. It's not going to run right. And that's my belief. If we don't have all our different kind of fibers and vitamins and minerals, and more importantly, the phytonutrients, which is my area of interest, you know, our bodies aren't going to run, we're not going to heal, and all these kinds of things.
Before you were hospitalized, had you ever heard of either a vegan diet, a plant-based diet, or a raw food diet?
Actually, it was quite funny. I mean, I had a friend in college who was vegan or vegetarian, actually, in my fraternity, so I knew what that was. And then, like a few summers prior, or no, like a Thanksgiving prior, I was going out dating this girl named Lindsay, and she took me to this Thanksgiving, and I met everybody brought, it was a potluck, and there was this one family, the guy's name was Samson, and you know, their family only ate this certain raw food, vegan, plant-based stuff, and I was really curious and asked him lots of questions about it. And then to this day, I know Samson, he watches my videos now and stuff too, but yeah, so I had learned about it. I'm like, this is kind of weird, but I was raised and born in California, so I was open to these kind of crazy things.
That's something that it's just so interesting, because you're not the first person I've heard, but you didn't even dabble in vegan junk foods or whole food plant-based. You went straight from hospital to what you've been doing for the last 25 years.
Yeah, basically I went to hospital to juicing twice a day, and still ate, you know, chicken or whatever once in a while, and then tried to eat more vegetable-based foods. And then at a certain point, maybe after about 6 months, then I went on the Arise and Shine cleanse by Dr. Richard Anderson. Herbs, psyllium, bentonite, and basically I drank water for like 2 weeks to basically kind of like a little cleanse or fast, if you want to call it that. And then after that, my skin cleared up, and nothing could ever clear up my skin until I did that program. And I'm like, and in the book, he also talks about, like, if you're gonna do this cleanse, you shouldn't go back to eating what you're eating that gave you the problems in the first place. You got to eat this raw food diet. And then at that point, I remember taking a shower, and I was like, looking at my body, I was like, oh my God, my skin is cleared up for the first time in my life, something doctors never could do with all the hydrocortisones and everything they gave me. And I started crying in the shower. And I don't remember if I was crying because I was so happy that my skin was cleared up, or number two, that I was so scared I got to eat this damn raw food diet for the rest of my life.
Has it been easy, or at times has it been difficult?
Oh, for me, it's been completely easy. For me, specifically, AJ, it's about the carrot and the stick, right? To me, it's like, I'm doing this because if I want to live, I'm eating raw and I'm eating healthily. Otherwise, I could have some kind of immune situation, immune compromise, lowered weak immune system, and I'm back in the hospital and I don't make it alive. So that's always sitting in the back of my head. Now, that may not be the best way to think about things, but then the other thing is, as I've seen the benefits, you know, I've maintained my same weight for the last 26 years. I have the energy now that I did when I was younger. I don't have all the aches and pains of my brother that's 2 years younger than me, that is clinically obese, that eats junk food, you know, can't climb up structures with his kid, even though he's a PE teacher. And I'm right there with, you know, my nephew when we were hanging out and doing all that stuff, you know. So it's like, I really see the benefits. Plus, you know, I mean, people say I look about at least 10 years, sometimes even younger than I actually am, you know. So I believe this works, and I'm just going to continue to do this. And I mean, I feel if I do slip up, like way back in the day, I had a breakup when I was raw, and I started maybe a couple years in. I had a breakup with a girl, and I ate like baked potatoes, or I actually went out to this the taco shop and had McDougal vegan burritos, because there's in Sonoma County, there were some taco shops that have McDougal vegan. So that was when I totally messed up, and I was still vegan, right? And I would really just feel the next day when I woke up, like the energy just zapped out of me. Like I didn't have the high level of energy, jump out of bed, go 100%. I'd be like, kind of be like groggy. Not to say that food's bad, but maybe some people need to slow down a little bit, and the cooked food will mellow you out a little bit. And
that was the one thing that I noticed the 2 years I was raw, is that I didn't sleep much, and it's because I'm a pretty high wired person, and I feel like for me raw is like, it's like I'm too hyper, because it does give you so. Why do you think it gives you so much more energy? Is it because cooked food takes longer to digest?
It's a good question. You have to ask some doctor. I have my maybe ideas about that. I mean, it's probably having to do with maybe, I don't know, enzymes in the food, maybe how our microbiome handles raw versus heat processed foods. It probably mostly depends on what's in the food. I've always eaten pretty much clean, with like a minimal sugar, well, no added sugar. And I try to do very little. I don't use oil myself, but I don't try to eat oil and salt and all these things. That'll kind of just mess you up and feel groggy. Like if I go out to a restaurant and it's something salty, like that's when I feel it. So I think it's the additives mostly. But even now, I've been experimenting with some heat processed foods that I wouldn't normally be able to eat raw, or don't want to eat raw. And I feel it makes me a little more tired. But sometimes that's a good thing when I'm doing it late at night, because then I'll be like, okay, now I'm just going to sleep instead of be up till 2 a.m. and then, not go to sleep at a decent time.
By heat processed, do you mean like, what do you mean, like dehydrated or?
Oh, pressure cooked. Pressure cooked is my favorite appliance for heat processing your food.
Like, have you done a video on the pressure cooker?
Yeah, so I made one video so far where I prepare food for my parents, but I haven't done any public videos showing me preparing my own food. It's slow, because like it's not like, oh, John's cooked now or something. Like like my goal isn't to be necessarily a raw foodist. My goal has always been to be 100% health focused, right? And so I believe by adding some heat processed foods, which is not a surprise, I have been eating some of these. Like I would eat artichokes in little bottles. So instead of eating artichokes in bottles that somebody else heat processed and cooked, I'm getting organic artichokes and heat processing myself and getting them in a better way. Plus, it's something that I had as a child that I really missed as a raw foodist. You can eat artichokes raw. They're not very fun. You could also juice them, which I still need to do. And that's probably the best way to eat them. So maybe I should just start juicing my artichokes.
Artichokes are wonderful. And you're right. They don't seem like they would taste very good raw.
I mean, you could eat them. I've done it before, but they're just not. They're not. I don't like them as much personally, but
Right. May I ask which pressure cooker you like to use, since you're such a
Instant Pot.
Me too. Thank you.
It's so easy. I mean, you put stuff in there, and I heat process mushrooms, because mushrooms are a food that some people eat raw, but actually technically you could get away with it. But for best ideas, the best science, and I talked to Paul Stamets, the mushroom expert guy, some should really be heat processed, or they're quite toxic.
That's what Dr. Furman has said, that you want to always make sure you don't eat the mushrooms raw. Have any of the doctors that treated you when you had spinal meningitis have seen what has come of you?
Oh no, I don't. I try to avoid hospitals whenever possible, and I don't really talk to them. I didn't have a general practitioner back in the day or anything like that. Yeah.
Have you been sick at all the last 26 years?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very rare. I mean, if I didn't travel, if I only stayed at home and stayed in my garden, I wouldn't be sick, basically. It's when I travel and then I'm like up late, I'm traveling on the airplane, recirculated air, and I'm not eating my exact, proper, I have a pretty regimented diet, which sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's not fun. Like my third juice of the day is my root juice that I'm drinking right here. And this is just, purple carrots, orange carrots, beets, jicama, red cabbage, kale stems from my garden, some apples and ginger and turmeric. So this is like power packed. And when I'm traveling, obviously that doesn't happen. So the last time I was really sick actually was February 2020. when I was actually, I made 2 trips concurrently. So I was out in Florida, and then on the way back, I stopped in Dallas for a cannabis trade show, or a hemp trade show. And then I just remember getting on the airplane, I was just coughing, like dry coughing. I couldn't stop coughing. And at that point, that's when I think I got the COVID personally. And it took me out for like, I got home, and then it took me out for like 1 whole day. I really got out of bed for like, I could get out of bed, but I didn't want to get out of bed. I got out of bed for 30 minutes just to do the work I really needed to do, and then went back to bed and slept. And then after that, the next day I was able to get up, but I was really not feeling good. And I just basically juice fasted, and then I was fine.
That is great. I mean, the only thing I don't like about juicing is I hate cleaning the machine. Can't they just make one that is just so easy?
Yeah, I got the solution right here. So this one, Chef AJ, takes me 80 seconds. So if you can't do 80 seconds, you shouldn't just be juicing.
Why is it so easy to clean?
So this one's easy to clean because the juicing screen is so small. So here's the parts you got to clean. We'll take some of this away because it's getting crowded here. These are the parts you got to clean right here, right? So this part comes off. You just blast hot water through that. This part, blast hot water through that. Maybe brush it a little bit. The next part, this is the hardest part to clean. This screen is not metal. It doesn't collect like a lot of gunk like in there and jammed in. This screen is the hardest part of this juicer to clean, and there's not a lot of screen area on it. In addition, I don't know what they do, but in the manufacturing of this screen doesn't get clogged up with pulp like other juicers for some reason. They must have some special process that I'm not privy to, but I've done this a million times where I juice and like you really just brush it a little bit. Or actually I have an outdoor kitchen now, so I use the garden hose with a high pressure spray, and I just spray it off full pressure, and it basically blows everything out. I would still brush it. And then you have the auger to clean, which really you could blast hot water on here, and if you use a soap and scrub brush, comes off pretty easy. And then you basically blast water through this, and I have a video, easiest juicer to clean in the world, 80 seconds, and I time it on my iPhone while I'm washing it, and you can see. But I mean, I talk fast and I move fast. You know, the juicer I normally use, because this juicer is great for greens, maybe not so good if you want to juice fruit. I do recommend, not juicing fruit unless you're going to drink soda, and fruit juice is a better option. But still, I would encourage people to drink more vegetable juices, and that's why I like this machine. This machine takes me 3 minutes to clean, so it has a lot more screen area, but it's double the amount of cleaning time. But the juicing time is less because of the way this machine works. You don't have to like push each item in, whereas this one, the gravity takes it in. So, that's why I like this style. It allows me to juice a bit more quickly.
And so is the first one you showed, what's I know that there's masticating juicer, centrifugal juicer. So what are the different types you just showed?
Yeah, so this is called they normally would call this a masticating juicer. That's what the industry uses. I don't agree with that term because the true masticating juicer is the champion juicer, because that works with little teeth and it actually heats things up and causes some friction and lowers the nutrition quality, in my opinion. So you can't compare masticating to this, which is I would call a slow juicer or a cold press juicer. It's an auger style juicer. So technically the technical term is a single auger horizontal juicer, whereas this is a single auger vertical juicer. This works much like those old fashioned meat grinders that you put the meat in, and it basically just crushes it all up, squeezes it, and then compresses it down. And then the juice comes out the screen here and the pulp comes out the front, kind of like the champion.
What do you do with all the pulp?
So all the pulp, so like, for example, I'll juice in this machine, and then I'll use another juicer, the pure juicer, which is basically the upgraded Norwalk, and then I press out the pulp, and I could get about 20 to 25% more juice out of the pulp, depending on what I'm juicing. After that, the pulp is really dry. I mean, people like to use it to like make crackers with and all these things, and sometimes I'll feed it to my dog, like put it in his dog food, but usually not if I repress it, because then it's really dry and there's not a lot of nutrients in there, in my opinion, left. Sometimes I've dried it and then turn it into a powder, like if it's purple, like if I juice my purple carrots, I'll like turn it into purple powder because there's like purple anthocyanins, which are valuable to me, but standard carrots are not so valuable. So otherwise it goes in my compost bin. and then it turns into soil so that I could grow my garden. And all my food scraps go into my compost bin.
One of the reasons I liked your video comparing the Nutri Milk and I bought it is that when people were telling me to buy a different machine that was much less expensive, what I didn't like about that machine is it left the pulp over. And if I'm having nut milk, I figured, why would I want to throw that away? You know, I would want to have the whole milk rather than the nut water. But in juicing, aren't you throwing away part of the valuable part of the plant, the fiber?
Depends. So, I mean, like AJ, everybody always wants to make things right, wrong, good, bad. I'm a whole food plant-based vegan. I don't eat juice stuff. You know, it's fractionated. You're missing some of the fiber. Now, I want to clear up some things. Number one, when you juice, right? The juice comes out one side of the juicer, and some of the fiber comes out the other side. So there's many kinds of fiber. I'm not the scientist to know all the different hemicellulose and cellulose and pectins and all the different crazy words, but I do know that in most cases, they classify fiber as two types, soluble and insoluble fiber. The insoluble fiber, as far as I'm aware, helps us go through and helps us keep us regular and pushes stuff through because it's bulk that our microbiome, for the most part, I believe, doesn't really chomp on or eat, right? Meanwhile, the soluble fiber, which is what dissolves in water, which is what I believe is in oatmeal, and it may lower your cholesterol. It's what our microbes chomp on. Now, when you juice, you keep probably the majority of the soluble fiber. Why? What does soluble mean? Soluble means dissolves in water. If you look at my juice carefully, you probably can't see it, but you can almost see it's like layered up in different layers. This is some of the different pectins. If I'm juicing like lemons with the skins and all, like that juice, I do lemon, ginger, turmeric, and ginseng and rosemary. The next day, the juice will be firm, kind of like a jello, because all the pectin solidifies. It's kind of like you're making jam with the pectin. So I'm still getting some percentage of fiber. I have a video specifically on this, and I made up a chart of the different fibers that's left. So, for example, carrots, because I juice, a lot of people juice carrots. Carrots are still contain about 52 to 48% soluble to insoluble fiber. So when you juice carrots, you're still getting about half of the fiber approximately. Now, on the flip side, if you juice pineapple, that's a bad thing if you want to get fiber from your juice, because pineapple only has about 10% soluble fiber in the juice, which is not a whole lot. Cactus fruits, actually, they're very gelatinous texture, right? When you juice cactus fruits, you're keeping about 50 to 75% of the fiber, because most of the fiber in cactus fruits is the soluble fiber that's that gel-like stuff. So it just kind of depends. And so, like, do we need all the fiber? I mean, other than drinking my juices, I'm on a whole food plant-based diet. I eat mostly fruits and vegetables as the source of my vegetables, specifically as a source of my calories. I eat some nuts and seeds too. But, you know, there's benefits to removing some of the fiber. I mean, if you wanted to, what I would recommend people, if you absolutely want to make sure you still get that whole food, you would want to drink the juice separately, and then at a separate meal, eat the fiber, right? I've looked up studies that there are studies that go into the benefits of the vegetable fiber compared to like flax fiber, compared to grain fibers. And actually, they really kind of did rank them. And actually, for me, I would rather remove the vegetable fiber and then add in flax powder to have that fiber, the lignins and the anti-cancer properties in the flax, than just have the vegetable fiber. You know, but if you wanted to, you could eat the vegetable fiber separately if you felt you needed it. But here's the thing, AJ, when you remove the fiber, it's shown in scientific studies that some of the nutrients are better and easily absorbed. So they did a study with breast cancer survivors, and the breast cancer survivors, whether they ate, you know, whole carrots, for example, versus juiced carrots, the beta-carotene levels in their blood were significantly, at least twice as high, if not higher, when they juiced the carrots than when they ate them whole. Now, beta-carotene, you know, is a marker for maybe potentially other phytonutrients, but it's also, as far as I'm aware, you have to consult your doctor. It's probably really important if you're a breast cancer survivor to have high levels of beta-carotene, so that, because it's one of the things that help fight off cancer, supposedly. I'm not exactly sure about all that stuff, but that's, I think, the benefit of juicing. Plus, the juicing allows you to concentrate more foods than you normally would. So, for example, 1 pound of leafy greens if I juice them, will turn into 1 cup or 8 ounces of juice. And now I can get those leafy greens into me without the fiber. Of course, other parts of the day I'm eating, fiber from, in salads and lettuce and kale. So I will never advocate a juice only diet. No, but I think as an adjuvant, for a whole food plant-based diet, it could take you up a notch, and especially people that have cancer and all these diseases, the Gerson therapy. I mean, it's basically a juice therapy where you're drinking a lot of juices. That's because this floods your body with these phytonutrients that'll help, whether you're trying to heal or whether you're trying to stay young, right? You will get, nutrient sufficient, you will obtain nutrient sufficiency more easily, especially if your digestive system is not working properly, as most people's probably are not.
Some people say that juicing, especially things like leafy greens, is expensive because you need a lot more than if you were eating them whole.
Absolutely. So if you eat them whole, 1 pound of leafy greens is 1 pound of food. And if you're juicing them, you get 8 ounces. So all I would say is that if you think about it that way, it is more expensive. But if you think about how many phytonutrients are you absorbing, I think it's a lot less expensive personally, because science shows anyways in carrots, and maybe they've done this with kale, I haven't seen that study yet, you get a greater uptake of the beta-carotene. So if you just eat, so you said the same exact thing, John, if you just ate, why don't you whole carrots, like it clearly state by science, we'll get higher levels of beta-carotene by juicing the carrots than eating the whole, even if you're removing some of the fiber. But I guess what is your goal? Is your goal to feel full and just to eat cheaply? Because I know you're all about caloric density and all this stuff and keeping full. I'm really focused on getting my nutrients. So maybe a good balance for people will be half and half. That's why I eat salads at night and eat whole fruits for fiber, and I drink some juices in the morning.
Vegetables and fruits are so low in caloric density. So how do you get enough calories if you're not eating starches like tubers and squashes and whole grains and legumes? Because 100, 200, 300 calories a pound most. So how many pounds of food do you have to eat every day?
That's a good question. So I made a video about this, answering this question, because most people into raw foods do a raw food fruit-based diet where they're getting the majority of their calories from fruit, right? Because fruit's 300 calories a pound on average. Vegetables maybe 100 per pound on average, okay? There's not many people that do what I do, in my opinion, where I get the majority of my calories from vegetables is my goal, because they're much more nutrient dense, in my opinion. And it's hard to eat a lot of vegetables. Even if I blended them, I couldn't get there because it takes up so much mass. That's where juicing really comes in. So this juice is about 1 quart of juice, right? 1 quart of juice on average contains about 4 pounds of produce, right? So that's one juice could be 400 calories, if it's the right, some greens, are less, like lettuce and whatnot. But, so if I had 2 of these juices, that's like 800 calories. This is my second juice today. I have a root juice second, and this is basically all starchy vegetables, carrots, beets, jicama, and people that, what about the sugar in there? There's still more sugar in white bread than my carrot juice for your glycemic index, right? So it all depends on where you're coming from and what your goal is. My goal is to maximize my phytonutrients. So, and the first juice I do it's an 8 ounce shot of turmeric, ginger with some apple and lemon in there, and rosemary and ginseng. And that's insignificant for calorie wise, but that's more for nutrients. And then I do a green juice that's this same exact size, 1 quart.
Wow.
So you could see basically, just from my juices, I'm almost at 8, 9 pounds of produce right there from juices. So that's where I get a good portion of my calories. Then I have maybe 1 fruit meal and then 1 solid vegetable meal with, some nuts and seeds blended up in the dressing, and maybe some avocados and some olives, for some healthy fats as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to just read you a comment from Abdi, who's watching live. His customer service with juicers is great. I bought a juicer from him and he called to confirm my order. John says the best juicer is the one you'll use.
Absolutely. I sell many kinds, and each person has a different goal. If your goal is the most nutrition, I can sell you a juicer that's going to make you the most nutrition. but it's also harder to clean, and then you might not use it. So, and some juicers like a pair of shoes. I'm sure AJ, you have probably, as a lady, have plenty of pair of shoes, and you have one pair of shoes for each task. And I have one juicer for every task, because one juicer will always juice that item better than another one. But you know, some people only have one pair of shoes that they do everything in. So it's hard to get one juicer that's going to do everything if you're trying to do a wide variety of things, which is what, you know, I do. That's why I have multiple appliances to do these things.
Does anybody really know more about appliances than you? And does anybody call you Johnny Juicer?
So there already is a Johnny Juicer. I wouldn't be surprised if you already interviewed him. He's a pretty popular guy on Instagram. He juices, and his name's Johnny. But nobody calls me Johnny Juicer. And I wish that I met somebody that knew more about appliances than me. You know, specifically to process, you know, to maintain the highest level of nutrients out of plant foods, because that's my specialty. I wish somebody knew more, because I would want to pick their brain and learn things that I don't know, so that I can become a better person, not only for my customers and for people that watch me on YouTube, but for myself, more importantly.
Wow. Well, ZG, who's watching live, says, I love your heart, John. You know, I was blown away. Before I even had a juicer for juicing, I got the Champion juicer in 1987 because I had gone to a vegan potluck. I was 27 years old, and they used it to make banana ice cream. And my mind was blown. Who thought of that? And is that the best machine if your goal is just to make sorbet or ice cream?
Good question. So yeah, I know the best machine for sorbet, in my opinion, is like the Pure Juicer or the Norwalk, which is a $2,300 juicer, because it basically works just like the Champion, but has an all stainless steel blade, and it's easier to clean than the Champion or the Norwalk is, and it makes the ice cream more fluffy. Now, the reason why the Champion works the best, in my opinion, compared to like a slow auger juicer like this, which could also do that task, is because the Champion adds air and kind of whips it up as it's making it. This is a bad thing when you're making juices, because it actually adds air to your juice, oxidizing it more. But when you're making banana ice cream, it gives you a much better texture and mouthfeel, whereas this will make more of a hard pack, you know, sorbet, but it won't melt as fast. So if you got to take to a potluck, maybe this is the good one to use. But, you know, I've been to potlucks in parks where I actually took the Champion to the park and took my frozen bananas to the park and made the frozen banana sorbet there. Or I call that ice cream. People are like, wait, are you adding cream to it? I'm like, because there's my family that wasn't vegan. I'm like, no, this is 100% bananas. There's nothing else. It's so delicious.
I know it blows people away, because all the years I lived in LA, I always taught cooking classes, and that was one of the recipes I made. And people would buy the Champion juicer, not because they wanted to juice, just because they wanted to make the ice cream.
And let me tell you a secret, AJ. So, I mean, I travel a lot too. So there's a farm in Hawaii that I visited, made a video there actually. They sell white sugar pineapples. And they are completely amazing. They're very low acid pineapples. And that, I have to say, is better than banana ice cream, is white sugar pineapple sorbet. And actually the farm there uses the Champion to make it at the farmer's market. And they just give you one sample, and then you're in line to buy the whole, you know, little cup worth.
Wow. You know, as much as I love banana, my favorite is grape.
Oh, I've never done grape.
Yeah, frozen grapes, whether it's the Nut for Milk or the Champion juicer, it's my favorite of all the flavors. You'll have to try it sometime.
I've never tried that. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, it's hard to get good quality grapes since I moved from Sonoma County.
Do you know what thylakoids are?
Thylakoids.
Thylakoids, Thylakoids. They're Dr. Greger writes about them in his book, How Not to Diet. They're these compounds that are in dark green leafy vegetables. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but they're known to turn off the hunger switch, to block fat absorption. So I use them in my program. I don't tell people to juice, but to eat greens for breakfast so that they won't crave sugar. I find that when I eat or drink or whatever greens, it just kills my appetite, and I'm just not hungry for hours.
Wow, thank you for enlightening me. I haven't heard about the thylakoids. I will look into that more. But I mean, my gardening channel is called Growing Your Greens, because I believe the greens are the most important food on the entire planet that is most under-eaten. It's the highest in nutrition and lowest in calories. And actually, that'd be kind of interesting to look up what foods are highest in these thylakoids, you know, of all greens, because the other thing I promote is diversity. You know, as much as people like to eat kale or collard or spinach, you know, there are so many other greens that a person could eat that, you know, I could grow in my garden, or people could grow in their garden, or even if you just go to an Asian market, you know, you'll find like Egyptian spinach and water spinach, also known as kangkong. You'll find all these different greens that Americans don't really know about that they're eating all over. And each plant is basically a phytochemical factory, you know, and they produce different nutrients and phytochemicals in there, the thylakoids included, as well as all these other things that I don't even have a clue what the name is. I don't really care what the names are. I'm just getting them into me. I mean, just recently, just the other day, I juiced the ashitaba stems, which is a leafy green from Japan, and it's related to the celery. And it has this, it bleeds this yellow stuff, this yellow sap. It's called chalcones, and they've been researching Japan for being anti-cancer, and has a really, I would say, unique flavor that I've come to like, but some people may not like it. But there's so many different plant compounds that are completely amazing, that amazes me. And then the other thing is, although they're in there, my goal is to how can I best extract those without damaging them, you know, before I get them into me. I mean, this is a vacuum blender. So I know, I think Chris Kendall talked about the vacuum blender. So this is made by Tribest, and this comes with a vacuum pump. So you put this on top of the blender carafe before you blend, and you press it, and you can hear the little pump coming on. It just sucking all the extra oxygen out of the carafe. And then you blend in an oxygen deprived environment. You know, it's proven in scientific studies that are published that you can, you know, preserve 2 to 3 times more of some antioxidant, you know, vitamins and, you know, polyphenols, for example, like in blueberries, by using this technique instead of just blending them up. So if, like, I don't know about these, that property you talked about, phytoquins or whatever they are, like if you blend them, will they be damaged because now you're oxidizing them? And that's why I want to, you know, I vacuum blend everything these days. And that's, you know, I mean, of course, here's the thing. I'll tell you, as much as I'll love to sell you guys a vacuum blender, you guys could get them other places. But I'll even tell you even better, the best way to process most things is to use your teeth. Most people are lazy. They don't chew enough. And if you want to make carrot juice, don't buy a juicer from me. Eat the carrots, chew it up, suck the juice out, and spit the fiber out. That's the best way to do it, honestly. But you probably couldn't do a quart's worth that way. You get too tired.
Absolutely. Have you ever had purslane?
Oh, I got it growing right here. I can pull some out of my garden. It comes up as a weed. It grows below my peppers, and every summer it comes up. Yeah.
Do you juice it or do you put it in your salads?
I usually just actually will put it in my salads or eat it. You know, I don't usually have, like, if I had a lot of, like, food is valuable to me, especially the food I grew, because I add all these different trace minerals in the soil. I add different soil probiotics and soil bacteria and fungi and all the things that farmers don't do that they should be doing, in my opinion. And so if I have a limited quantity of certain foods, then I'll either eat it whole or I'll vacuum blend it. If I have a large quantity, then that's when I start juicing it.
Right. Do you take any supplements, John?
I absolutely do take some supplements. So vitamin B12, of course, very important one for people that are on a plant-based or any kind of diet for that matter. And then I take a DHA irregularly. I take probiotics and enzymes. And what else am I taking? Oh, I'm taking some, I don't know, I would call them foods, because they're foods in capsules, you know, like phytoplankton. You know, to me, that's a food. It's like an algae powder, because it's not necessarily a vitamin.
Nice. Thank you. So Voracious Vegan says, I love John. I've been watching Grow Your Greens for years. Thanks to John's tutelage, I recently converted a brick fire pit in my backyard into a small raised bed to grow 6 purple tree collards, complete with drip system.
Wonderful. Tree collards are one of my favorite plants, and more people should know about tree collards. They're like a collard green, especially in Southern California, can grow year round, 365 days a year. That grows into a tree. My tallest ones have been 12 feet tall. They could go out and pick cancer fighting, anti-aging leaves every single day.
Right. So someone wrote in a question in advance for you. Deborah says, thank you for having John Kohler on. I just love him. Can you please ask him the following? Where I live, I can only grow in containers. For the absolute beginner gardener, what soil should I buy and how can I fortify the soil? I would love to grow zucchini, tomatoes, greens, potatoes. Any tips would be appreciated. Thank you.
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know where she lives, because that'd be the thing. So here's the thing, like, to me, like, soils that are in bags are usually not that high quality, because basically they're waste products of a certain industry that they're just trying to get rid of. So I would say the hydroponic store is probably going to have some of the best soils. Now they're going to be costly, but you know, you're worth it. I'd say for a standard soil that you could find somewhere locally would be the Dr. Earth soil. Like skip all the ones basically at Home Depot or Walmart or Lowe's. I do have a video where I actually go over like when I bought all these different soils at Walmart, and there's a video that I made about this, and I unbag them and I share with you guys my opinions on them. And you know, some of course are better than others. But you know, once you get the best bag soil, then there's a few things you should add to it. I mean, I could list a list of like 20 things that you should add to the soil to make it better, because that's what I do. I was mixing up soil yesterday myself. But I'd say number one, a high quality worm castings. Number one, because that's really, worm poop is biology that adds the biology to the compost that may not be existing. Number two, I'd say you want to add the trace minerals, which is what farmers don't do. Something like the rock dust trace minerals. A popular brand name is azomite or Cascade Minerals. And then the third thing I would add probably is a stuff called Alaskan humus, and that's available at a hydroponic store that adds a fungal compost that's not widely made. That's very critical for, you know, growing healthy plants that most farmers simply just omit.
Did you say worm poop?
Worm poop, worm castings, yes.
Oh wow, I didn't.
Is that vegan? If I'm using it in my garden, AJ?
Speaking of your garden, JL says, can you show it to us? I don't know if you're on a phone or a laptop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on my laptop. I mean, I could move to the side. This is on my pepper bed. I have about 73 peppers in this raised bed behind me with some shallots coming up. The shallots are the most nutritious, highest antioxidant anyways, onion family plant. And I want people to eat the shallot greens, not just the little, you know, bulbs that people normally eat.
Wow. When did you first become a YouTuber?
It was like 2009. I've been doing like 12 years. So I've been making videos for a long time.
Do you enjoy it?
It's one of the funnest things. I mean, people like to go to bars and, you know, maybe watch sports games. I like to like make a video.
Do you happen to, you have so many, but do you happen to know which one or ones are your most popular?
I'd have to look it up. I mean, some of my videos on juicing for weight loss, or maybe a Vitamix versus a juicer comparison where I explain the pros and cons each, because there's truly pros and cons of each. You know, some people, blending's the best, juicing's bad, and some people are like, juicing's good. And it depends. Like, I think the best of both worlds is if you do vacuum blending and slow juicing, I mean, you're probably, you know, you're up there. And then I have videos on aquaponics that have done really well. I have videos on microgreens on my gardening channel have done well. You know, some of my videos like on my raw foods channel on why your mouth burns when you eat figs or pineapple, you know, have done quite well, or I don't know.
Is it true that figs contain like wasp parts in them? I read that once and I haven't been able to eat a fig since.
I've never, you know, I have my own fig trees, AJ. I usually break them open before I eat them. And I've never seen any kind of wasp parts in theirs. You know, I'm not the expert or botanist to know all these things, but I think I asked a guy once, and I think something like some figs are pollinated by wasps, but then some aren't. I don't really know the true answer. So, but to me, figs are a plant food, so I'm eating it.
Right. That's nice. So it sounds like you really kind of only eat one big meal at the end of the day, like your salad. Is that right?
I try to do that optimally. I like to do that early in the day, actually. So my goal is I do 3 juices. This is my 3rd juice. And then I try to do like my big salad meal, or I usually make a soup, which is basically, my soup is basically a salad that's just drenched in, you know, like bell pepper juice that I blend in some nuts and seeds and dried pepper and other herbs and spices into. And then I try to do that earlier in the day, not super late. And then as it gets a bit later, maybe my dinner time, that'd be maybe my lunch technically, even though I don't like to eat by the clock. I eat by when I'm hungry. And then my last meal of the day, I usually try to do something lighter, like some fruit, for example. Or at that point too, I might also do just some plain heat processed vegetables.
Nice.
Or mushrooms, yeah.
Very cool. Do you have opinions on blenders as well? Like which ones are the best? Like people always ask me Vitamix versus Blendtec. And I say the one you'll use, the one that you can afford is the best one for you.
So, I would get that. I'd have to dial that down because it's like, everybody just wants to know the answer, but the answer is not that easy. So it depends what your goals are. You know, I've been to the Blendtec factory. I saw how the machines are made. I can confidently look people in the eyes and say Blendtec makes a superior engineered product that is more powerful and that runs at a higher RPM, because I've also tested the RPMs on the Blendtec versus the Vitamix. That being said, you know, I also like the Blendtec container because it's easier to clean, doesn't have all the flutes, and especially when I'm blending macadamia nuts that are $15 a pound or $12 a pound. Some people pay $25 a pound for them. I want to get every last bit of the macadamia nut dressing out of the blender, right? So, so I like that. But then now the issue with the Blendtec is that it has a dull blade, which they like to advertise. Our machine has a dull blade, and for, you know, if you're blending up or grinding up grains, the dull blade works better than the sharp blade for grinding grains. But for making green smoothies, where you want the finest particle size, you know, it's not as good. But both blenders oxidize as you blend in them, and that's really not good if you're eating healthfully for your health, right? But Blendtec in the next 90 days will come out with a vacuum blender attachment for the Vitamix units or for the Blendtec units. So then I would say if you got the Blendtec carafe that does the vacuum on a Vitamix or the Blendtec, that's the best. Because overall, I don't really care. I'd rather somebody buy a $55 vacuum blender over a $400 Vitamix, which I do have a video on my Raw Foods channel, because vacuum blending really is the next level, is the game changer. Now, if you really want to, if you press me hard and said, John, what's just the best blender, any amount of money? I would tell you this. I would get, and I use it in my kitchen because I've been into raw foods for 26 years, and I've always had issues with blenders when I make thick mixtures, because I work my blenders hard. I work all my equipment hard. They'll always stop when I do thick mixtures, and that bothers me because it'll overheat and shut down. And it'll also slow down because it's an AC motor, so the RPM slow down as the load is more thick, right? Or as the mixture is so thick. So now I use the the Stealth X Blendtec blender, which is an $1,800 blender that only some Starbucks use, not even all the Starbucks, and coupled with their vacuum carafe. And so basically for about $2,100, you can have the best blender.
Nice.
But then I'm going to actually, it's even going to be better because at some point I'm going to be working with Blendtec to make my own signature blender. That's me, their blender, plus some extra added things to make it over the top. And that will be the best. And I could clearly say, you want the best, it's this, but most people are not going to spend that much money to get it.
Right. Well, I really feel like I can trust you when you say what's the best, or what, or not even just the best, but when you talk about different machines. And people always ask me, because I have both the Blendtec and the Vitamix. I don't have the vacuum thing, but like you, what I like about the Blendtec is the numbers, you can actually see them, you know, like when you're measuring.
The new blender carafe on the Blendtec, it goes all the way to the top, AJ. I could grab it if you want to see it.
Right. And whereas the Vitamix, I can't see it. And also, like you say, when I'm making like a nut cream or just any kind of something creamy, even a hummus, with the Blendtec, because of the square shape, I can get all of it out. The Vitamix, it just leaves so much in the bottom.
Of course, yeah, but then on the Blendtec, you don't have a tamper to use.
That's the other thing. And is it because Vitamix has like a patent on the tamper and Blendtec can't have one? But what I love about the Vitamix is the tamper.
I would say Blendtec is anti-tamper. But the other thing is they've designed their machines so they don't necessarily need the tamper because of their single wingtip blade. Things could drop down easier in it. That being said, you know, a blender is not the appliance to process foods that don't have a high water content, in my opinion. So you should just be using a different appliance to process those foods. Like the Vitamix is not a good machine to make nut butters, for example. You know, the Nutrimilk is a better machine. Although, you know, I would use a vacuum blender to do that, so I wouldn't have to oxidize or cause extra rancidity in my nuts.
So this vacuum attachment that you're saying is going to be available soon for both the Blendtec and the Vitamix, other than having better nutrient profile when you use it, does it affect the taste in any way?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that are affected. So I'll just run down them really fast. Number one, you don't add oxygen to your blend. So if you start with your blend, if your Vitamix, your Blendtec now, you fill out your carafe to here. When you're done blending, it's up to here, right? Did you just create food out of thin air? No, you added a lot of oxygen into the mixture. So now when you drink it, you're more likely to get, you know, bloating, gas, and belching. And so that's basically reduced. The other thing is when you remove the oxygen before blending, you have stronger flavor profiles because the oxidation is causing some of the nutrients that have the flavors to lower, right? You also get better color retention. So because you're not oxidizing it and because you're not adding air into it, you know, the standard test I do is tomatoes, you know, vacuum blended versus not. The tomatoes vacuum blended will have a lot deeper, richer, you know, lycopene pigments because it won't add air in there. In addition, the vacuum blended mixtures won't separate as quickly. They'll still separate, but they won't separate as quickly into distinct layers. In addition, the texture, all else being equal, will be a finer texture because like if I put marshmallows in here and then pull a vacuum on it, the marshmallows will grow big like the Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters, right? Because we're basically drawing open the fibers and making it more easy to get cut up. Let's see, what are some of the other things that happen? Yeah, the nutrients, of course. Oh, and for you, Chef AJ, since you're into this, since you're a chef, the fats are better blended. So if you try to make a mousse with like avocado in there, right? Avocado cara mousse or whatever, and you blend it in a standard blender, it flattens out and it gets the texture is just like solid. But if you do that same process in a vacuum blender, it gets more fluffy, which is insane. So I mean, there's so many different things. I made a bunch of videos at Blend Tech, hopefully to promote their vacuum attachment for the Vitamix that hopefully will be out soon, where I go over like the big differences with all the different intricacies and the benefits that people get. It is truly the biggest game changer. I mean, the Vitamix was, I think, invented about 100 years ago. Vacuum blending is the biggest, you know, biggest revolution in blending. Vacuum blending is the biggest revolution in blending since the blender was invented, in my personal opinion. But it's not widely adopted by the general public, and people think, how could just sucking out the oxygen make a difference when you blend? Let me tell you guys, it does make a huge difference. I mean, if you store, people know about the food saver, right? You get a food saver and suck out the oxygen when you store your bananas in the freezer, or, you know, store your dried grains and beans so they can store 5 times longer. Well, think about it, man. When you're hitting it with a blade 1 million times a minute or whatever, how many thousands of times, you're just causing excess oxidative damage to the food. Oh, the other thing that's very important, AJ, is say you make a banana green smoothie in the blender, non-vacuum blender. You made so much you could, because it's so healthy for you, you drink it and you're so full you leave that much left. And then you like leave it sit out for a couple hours and you're like, okay, I'm thirsty again. You'll drink it, and then you drink it a couple hours later, you're like, oh, this tastes horrible. It doesn't taste like when I just made it. It's because the antioxidants are lost and it's oxidizing further as it's sitting on your counter. I've done this before many times in the Vitamix, but now if you vacuum blend it, you preserve the antioxidants. So even if you let it sit out on your counter, the vacuum blended mixture is going to taste similar to how you drank it a few hours ago without it going bad faster.
Wow. Somebody was on the show the other day and talked about some attachment I've never heard of for the Vitamix. That they use it for composting. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I'm familiar. So that's not an attachment for the Vitamix. It's a product, a whole new product that the Vitamix is making. It's the Vitamix Food Cycler. So it originally came out from a company in Canada because I saw them at the Houseware show, and it's called the Food Cycler. So they were marketing under the Food Cycler brand, and they weren't able and successful at doing that. And the company had poor customer service because I wanted to resell those. And then basically Vitamix signed a negotiation with them so that they could distribute the product with their brand name on it. So basically here's what it does. What it does is you put your food scraps in there, and then what it does, it heats it up. So it kind of like dehydrates it, but at the same time, it has a slow running blade that basically grinds it all up into a small, you know, powder. So when you're done with like your food scraps, it turns into like these coffee ground looking things that then is not a compost. It's basically just dehydrated, crushed up, you know, plant material that now you could feed your garden with. So, I mean, if you want to save your money, because I'll tell you guys always like it is, what you guys could do is take your produce scraps, put it in your oven, heat it up, not too hot, and let it go for a while. Then once you have it dry, then put it in your blender, grind it all up, and then put that on your garden and save the $400 that it would cost you. Now, this thing makes it easy because you can fill it up and just run it, and has a little vent and carbon and stuff so it doesn't smell. But to me, that's not it's not really true compost. It's broken down and you're reducing your food waste. By all means, I think that's better than, you know, send it to the landfill. But if you're going to do all that stuff, I would just say go outside to your backyard, dig a hole, bury your food scraps, and that's going to do better for the bacteria and the worms in the garden by burying fresh food scraps that have their high water content than dried food scraps that then need to get rehydrated before they get processed for the most part by other living bacteria and fungi and microbes in your garden, in my opinion.
You want to hear a funny story about Vitamix? So a couple of years ago, I was doing a cooking demo in Cleveland at the NHA conference. And so they had a brand new Vitamix donated and John Barnard, the founder of Vitamix, was in the audience. So I put the stuff in the blender and it's like, doesn't work. Like I broke it. And what happened is that little plastic top, the round one, that's in it. It was in the blender, but it's the same color. I couldn't see it. And it was actually kind of funny. But I said to him, you should make that a different color because it was a new one and nobody knew that it was inside the blender.
The plastic, you mean this little plug thing?
Yeah, the plug.
It's like whatever. Oh, this has a vacuum on it. Like,
so I blended it. So
you blended this up.
Yep. And, so.
Oh, yeah, because it's the same color as a carafe, right?
Right. So I said, maybe you can make it a different color so that won't happen. But you had to be there, but it was kind of funny.
And they never did.
Right. Nope. Never didn't take my advice. So John, when you go to stores like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, or, they sell what they're calling cold pressed juices with good expiration dates. Often it's just greens. I know it's not optimal, but is it better that somebody drink some of that than not juice?
So here's the thing, AJ. So a lot of the green juices, because that's what I drink when I'm traveling. Like sometimes I'll travel with my juicer and actually have a really small juicer. It's really not that big that I just got recently. But some of those green juices, especially like the first ingredient might be apple or grapefruit, which is, my goal is to not drink apple or grapefruit juice, just to drink green juice despite it having greens in there. That being said, I would much rather have somebody buy one of those green juices or a cold pressed juice, and it has been processed by HPP, which is high pressure pasteurization, which is not using heat, but it does deactivate, and kill some bacteria and whatnot. Probably lowers the microbiome benefits of it than making it fresh. Also, it costs a lot more, plus it's coming in a plastic bottle. But I'd rather have somebody buy a cold pressed juice like that than, drink a soda or even a kombucha. Kombucha is not as healthy because they're adding sugar that's not 100% digested. And a green juice or a juice would be better. That being said, like I think Costco will sell cold pressed juices. They have 100% celery with a little bit of lemon in there, which is more like beneficial than the green juice they sell, because I think the green juice has like grapefruit or apple in there as the predominant thing, because when you're juicing greens, it doesn't make a lot of juice. So these companies add something to make it taste good for the general public, which, hey, if the general public is drinking some extra grape or apple juice with the greens so that they can get them in, that's a good thing. But I want people to take it up a notch, to the next level and, invest in a juicer. Even if you don't buy an expensive one or a new one, for me, I would encourage people to go on Craigslist or OfferUp. I mean, I bought a used Champion juicer just so I could make banana ice cream for $25 on, Craigslist years ago, but OfferUp will sell, juicers for, a good brand used juicer for, $100 or so, if you could find one. And I want people to, increase their phytonutrient content, and juicing and vacuum blending are two excellent ways to do that, in my opinion.
Wow. Well, I can't wait for that. That attachment will work on either the Vitamix or the Blendtec. Do you have any idea about how much it'll run for?
Absolutely. So it's going to be $300, and the attachment is for the Vitamix. They have a Vitamix version or the Blendtec version. It's not, you can't cross.
Oh, you can't cross pollinate. Good to know. So you'd have to. Okay, good. Antoinette says, what does John think of the plant-based doctors who don't favor juicing or blending?
I would encourage them to look into the science, because I have looked at the science. I have videos where I go, you could search on YouTube, juicing science, and my videos will come up where I review the science. I mean, here's the thing, like some doctors I appreciate and love their information, but I think they just they haven't done the research on juicing, and they just have more of a common man's approach that juicing removes the fiber, it's bad, right? And juicing removes some of the fiber. But here's the thing, right? There's studies that show higher uptakes of beta-carotene when juicing. Not to say that we should only juice. There are also studies that show if you go on juicing, just add juice to the diet of whatever you're eating already, it enhances your microbiome. So on some level, just drinking juice could enhance your microbiome and make it better. If the juice didn't have things that fed your microbiome, such as fiber, it surely would not increase your microbiome. That being said, we should not live on juices. We shouldn't make the majority of our diet juices. If you want to juice for part of your caloric needs, I think that's great. And I think each person is different, right? Some people have messed up digestive systems, and that's where I think juicing is quite beneficial. I think some plant-based doctors personally get too dogmatic. And as a raw foodist for 26 years, when I got into raw foods, I was quite dogmatic. And that's not a good place to be, no matter what your dogmatism is about, in my opinion. So I would encourage the plant-based doctors that don't believe in juicing to look at some of the research. You know, you could start at some of my videos because I've taken out studies and I read them, and maybe I interpreted them wrong. And then please correct me if I did, because I will correct. I'm not a scientist and I don't read studies for a living or anything, but I think I understand some of the basics that aren't too hard to understand. And that's what I'd say.
Right. I think there's a difference, like you say, between juicing greens and juicing, sweet fruit. I think there's a big difference.
That being said, I have a video on why juicing sweet fruit or juicing fruits is not as bad as you think. And I guess the operand word there is as you think. People think it's automatically bad. For my brother juiced fruit, and instead of eating McDonald's, that's huge. And even if you juice fruit, you're still getting I mean, they actually kind of did a study on this, but not really. Like, if you don't chew your fruits well, you're not going to get as much nutrition as you could by putting the fruits through a juicer. So, for example, probably one of the most valuable parts of the apple are the apple skins and the core. And I juice the whole core, and the juicer, depending on what juice you're using, will break down the skins and extract the nutrients from the skins. And if you just put the apple in your mouth, chew it a few times, the skins will go right through you and you're not going to get the benefits from them. Same thing with grape skins and grape seeds. The juicer will crush up the grape seeds, put some of the seed extract into the juice, which is like a different kind of pycnogenols and all these things. And then you can get the benefits from that than eating it. But that being said, I don't necessarily recommend juicing fruits. I want people to juice primarily vegetables. But hey, if you got to get some fruits juice so that you get them in, your kids that don't eat fruits otherwise, I think that's a good thing.
Every now and then I'll get a watermelon and it's a clunker and I don't want to throw it out. But when it's a clunker, if I blend it or juice it, it makes it better. How come?
That's exactly what I do too, AJ, because if I get a watermelon that's no good, because what it's doing really is concentrating the nutrients, and it's basically creating more surface area for your taste buds to get the taste of what is there versus what is not there. So yeah, if there's a bad watermelon, I will juice it. Actually, my favorite watermelon juice is Costco has the organic watermelons right now for $5, and near me, probably other places too. And most of those are not too good. So actually, I'll juice that with ginger and then mint from my garden, to take it up a notch. Because now I'm drinking the watermelon, which, when you juice a watermelon, you don't get a lot of pulp out because it's mostly water anyway. So I'm not really losing a lot. The other thing is, if I drink watermelon juice, I don't get watermelon tummy. Like some people, if you eat watermelon, you kind of get a stomach ache or something. If I juice it, I don't get that stomach ache thing happening. Plus, then I enhance it with a lot of mint from my garden that now, adds high antioxidant food, nutrition, to my juice. Oh, and then I did do a recent video on my raw foods channel where I blended watermelon versus juiced it and had a third party, a friend. We did taste testing so you could learn which is the best way to have the best tasting watermelon juice, which I would also correspond with the most nutrition in your watermelon juice.
I like to do watermelon, cucumber, lime, and mint. That's
a good recipe too. Yeah, because now you're diluting the watermelon with more cucumber, which is actually a really closely related, brother to watermelon.
Yeah. JL says, if I start juicing, will I get John's energy? Yes.
Thanks for answering that one.
And Vicky says, does John compost in place in his garden?
In place. So no. So I don't do chop and drop because if I had a farm, I would absolutely do that. I have compost tumblers because I live in a standard residential tract house. I can't have an open pile. Plus, because I live in the arid climate of Las Vegas, an open pile would evaporate the moisture too quickly, and I'd actually have to then add extra water to make it compost properly. So I use closed compost tumbler bins. It's called the Jor form, and I have videos on YouTube about them.
Nice. Let's see. Monarch says, so John does not till his garden, then if he wants to keep all the friendly soil microbes healthy, I guess?
Correct. I advocate a no-till gardening style. I try to minimally disturb the soil as possible, as little. I try to disturb the soil as little as possible, and I try not to even dig in my garden. So what's there is there. To do my transplants, I have a bulb planter. So instead of like digging holes and wrecking a lot of stuff, I just pull out a bulb planter and pull out a little plug and plop my new plant in there and just cover it back up. So it's, but I'm not doing any kind of tilling. I don't recommend that.
Right. In addition to juicers and blenders, you also sell dehydrators, right?
Yeah, so I sell some dehydrators. Excalibur had huge issues with the coronavirus and shut down for a while, so now I'm bringing them back online. I also sell the Sedona brand dehydrators by Trivest, as well as the Samson brand dehydrators. And honestly, the Samson dehydrators are my favorite. They have a nice 10 tray and a 6 tray stainless steel unit. That's a really affordable price that I would recommend, for most people.
I went to Living Like Culinary. I got the what's Excalibur a long time.
Excalibur, yeah, that's the big brand name. And, I personally use Excalibur commercial 10 tray unit in my house, but it's $1,200. So most people are not going to be able to, get that. And to be honest with people, like, it's more fancy. You're going to pay more money, but it does the same exact job as a lesser expensive model. Their computer controlled model, that's like $300 something. But to me, like, dehydrators have always been, like, in general, overpriced for what they are. Come on, man, they're a heating fan with a thermostatic control and a fan and a heater. And I mean, then they charge a couple $100 for it. Like, I don't know. I dehydrate actually in the sun. Well, not in the sun, in the shade, in my arid climate. I dehydrated kombucha scobies last year. I have a picture on Instagram how I did that, just putting up an awning structure. And anyways, that was fun.
Nice. Spirit Junkie says, John is so great about all the subtleties of this aspect of health. And Marcus says, this gentleman is a total expert on this stuff. Phenomenal guest, Chef AJ. Thank you. You're welcome. And Monarch says, what is the best thing to eat or drink to maintain skin elasticity and muscle tone as we age?
Well, I have a lot of experience with that. I mean, I think I got pretty good muscle tone. And, I don't want to say that it's just the food you eat, right? I will say that it's also the exercise you get. One of the best things I did for my exercise routine was set up an outdoor kitchen area. And I got one of those plastic laundry sinks that are like $50 at Home Depot. And I just set a 5-gallon bucket underneath there. And then when I'm washing my produce in my sink, I catch the water in the bucket, then I shell out the buckets to like different parts of my garden to reuse the water to water my plants. And that has really gotten me some good muscles. Like, my forearms have gotten a lot thicker since I have to do that, since a gallon of water, I forget how much that weighs, but like, these are 5-gallon buckets full of water that now I get to balance. Oh yeah, and your friend JR was out too, right? JP. And JP was like, John, man, I have people do those bucket exercises carrying water just to balance. And like, I'm just doing that in my daily thing. But I'd say for skin elasticity, I think really important is vitamin C. And, that's commonly known. And I would say, like, I like to juice bell peppers. I don't juice a lot of oranges, but I juice lots of bell peppers. It's my favorite, like, basically soup stock that I make. It's raw because I basically just juice bell peppers, and I'll use like let's see, half gallon or 3/4 of a gallon of bell pepper juice as my soup stock and use that as my soup, so I get that. And then eating it, vitamin C doesn't last long in the body. And so you could buy a supplement like Ester C that is time release, but the better thing is just to eat vitamin C throughout your day. So, all my juices, green juices, root juices, they all have vitamin C. Now, the other thing that's important to me for skin elasticity is proper amounts of fats. I'm not really going to talk about that, but we want to have the proper amounts of fats. And I think some people on, plant-based diets maybe don't eat enough fat personally. And I only advocate whole food sources of fat personally. Through nuts and seeds. You definitely want to, not eat too much, but not eat too little. And then I think also really important and this is not really talked about, are the phytonutrients. The phytonutrients, in my opinion. Oh, and let's not even discuss trace minerals, right? Our bodies are complete systems, and I don't even understand how it works, but I know that I just want to flood my body with all the different trace minerals that it needs. so that every process could work properly. You know, if you don't have enough selenium, you could get, you know, Cashon's disease from the Coxsackie virus. It could go into a virulent form and be really bad. But if you have the selenium, then you're not going to be affected by that disease, for example. So I don't even know all these different functions in our body, but you can look up triage theory. This doctor guy made it, basically. But I would say phytonutrients are critical for our skin elasticity. And I mean, that's why my skin is so nice, is because my diet is focused around eating high phytonutrient foods. You know, the greens, the root vegetables. I could concentrate, even purple. I don't eat regular sweet potatoes. I eat only purple sweet potatoes because they're purple, high anthocyanin. You know, I got some purple corn that's like probably the highest anthocyanin, you know, plant food. And most people don't even know about that. I go crazy, and most people are probably not going to follow what I do. But if you just do at least one thing because of this video today and that you're watching, drink an extra juice, get some extra, you know, wild blueberries from Trader Joe's and eat them, put them in a smoothie, make a banana sorbet with, you know, wild blueberries with your bananas instead of just bananas. I've done my job.
Nice. Gigi says, what about the celery juice craze? Celery has to be organic, right?
I only drink organic celery juice. Yeah, and I only buy organic celery for that matter. So, I mean, I'm not the medical medium, and I don't have spirits talking to my ear, tell me what to do or what not to do. You know, I have an assumption about things. And here's the thing, right? If somebody's going to drink a juice in the morning, you know, instead of eating their bacon and eggs, that's a huge improvement, and people will see improvements. You know, our bodies are craving these valuable phytonutrients, and especially in the celery, it's the minerals. You know, because the stems of plants concentrate minerals. That's why I say don't throw out your kale stems or even your broccoli stems. Right? You should save those to juice if you're not going to eat them, because that's where the plants absorb more of the minerals. Now, on the leaves, the plant absorb more of the antioxidants in general on the leaves. You know, so that's why we want to, you know, if you're going to juice celery stalks, which are a stem vegetable, you should also juice the celery leaves, but then that'll make your celery juice taste a lot more bitter because celery leaves are bitter, and normally you can't even buy celery with the leaves on them. So like I grow celery for the leaves and for the stalks, and let me tell you, my homegrown celery tastes significantly stronger than that weak stuff I buy at the store, although sometimes I like to drink the weak stuff.
Nice. Okay. Question from Honor. Would lemon balm be a good replacement for mint?
Absolutely. Yeah. So they're related. Another one that I like to use in replacement for mint is actually cat mint or catnip, which actually the cats love. It actually become a weed in my garden, and it's not as invasive, so it doesn't spread like mint does, but my cat mint grows really well and has a very similar flavor. So yeah, I would absolutely use that. You know, I just, you know, will pick those. I have lemon balm and just pick them, and I usually add those to vacuum blended smoothies, because especially if you're using some of these high antioxidant foods, you don't want to put in a traditional blender where you're adding the oxygen. You're going to lower the nutrition in there.
Nice. Thank you. And Marcus says, can lemon skins be consumed? What about watermelon rind?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could eat those, although I generally rarely eat lemon skins or the watermelon rinds myself, but I do juice them. You know, that's one way that the juicer could be beneficial. I mean, Jay Kordich talked about this, right? The most nutrition in the lemons or the limes are, you know, in the white pith. And same thing with oranges. Now, the oranges and grapefruits and tangerines, you should peel off the coloring on the outside, the orange color, because they have basically essential oils that won't digest well for us. That'll give you like probably some bad gas and belching and bloating, but lemons and limes do not have that. And they're so beneficial, as well as the watermelon. I mean, Jay Kordich knew all the stuff in the watermelon rind, but I mean, to me, watermelon rind juice, because sometimes I'll juice the red only, and I'll save the rind to use actually instead of cucumbers, because it pretty much tastes like cucumbers, because it's a really mild, non-sweet juice at that point.
Nice. Vicky says, is Oakley around, and how many dogs have you fostered and found homes for?
Yeah, Oakley's sleeping. That's his favorite place to be. And I used to foster dogs with my ex-girlfriend, Nobly, who has passed on due to a head-on collision, which was quite sad. That was quite tragic. So please drive safely, everybody. And yeah, so we had foster dogs like all the time, and now I don't foster dogs anymore. I have my own dog. I travel a lot, so it was really great when we were doing that with Novalie. And Novalie actually started her own animal rescue too, so she was rescuing animals that had like 3 legs and was blind and all these cool things, and it was quite tragic that she was just no longer here with everybody.
I'm so sorry for your loss. JL says, do you ever get your blood work checked? I bet you have great numbers.
Absolutely. So my goal is to get it every year, and I do that with Dr. Rick Dina, who also has been on your show, who is actually running the Energy Reset Summit that I know you were in, AJ, and so am I. I'm coming up in a couple days. And I get them checked with Dr. Rick, and I'll often make videos going over my numbers with him. So you can check out my raw foods channel, OK Raw, where I will go over my numbers with everybody if they want to, check in. I think that is blood tests are critical to lead a healthy diet. Now, blood testing should be the minimum, the bare minimum you do, because as long as you have a good blood test, that's something. But I think, true health goes beyond just a single, or multiple year blood test. But that's a good baseline to make sure you're dialed in. There's things I wish I could check in my blood that I just simply can't, like, I want to be able to check anthocyanin content in my diet to make sure I got enough of those going, and I don't know how to check those yet.
That's funny. Marcus says, how many raw seeds a day do you recommend?
Raw seeds, so nuts and seeds. So my goal is to have like 1 handful of nuts and seeds a day, and like if you have a bigger hand, that means more. And if I'm getting really, really generous that day, I might do 2 handfuls, but that's like that's the most. And I encourage everybody to mix up their nuts and seeds and not just eat sunflower seeds every day or almonds every day because that's your favorite nut. Every nut and seed has different levels of omega-3 to 6s, and especially almonds and sunflowers are especially high in omega-6s, and you can get your balance out, and then you might not be converting into EPA and DHA, which I had a good episode with Dr. Rick Dina about, and you can get yourself in trouble. So generally, I recommend eating like a tablespoon of flax seeds along with other nuts and seeds to make sure your omega-3 to 6 balance stays at least in a better place.
Thank you. Jean says, do you have a moringa tree?
Yes, I do. It's back there. You can't see it right now, and it basically goes dormant in the winter time here because it doesn't like the cold, and then hopefully it'll reemerge and pop back out. It's come back alive. Well, it stays alive in the roots, and then it comes back alive about every 3 years. And then actually this week, I'm going to be filming a video sharing with everybody how they could get 10 moringa trees delivered to them with moringa seeds for probably like less than $50 or around $50, which is amazing because that's like $5 per plant. You can't even go to a plant nursery and buy these things for that cheap. So I'm excited about that. And I'm going to plant more moringa because moringa, I mean, it's related to cruciferous vegetables. So it has those isothiocyanates that Dr. Joel Furman would talk about. It's anti-cancer, anti-aging. And in tropical climates like Florida or Hawaii, it'll grow year round. Some places where it gets really cold and you get like I live in a zone 9, it might come back, every year in the summertime. Other places like where it snows and stuff, you have to take it inside for the winter. But that's another amazing plant that you could literally grow once, keep it alive, and have boundless amounts of beneficial anti-cancer, anti-aging leaves to eat every day.
Julie says, where did the name of your YouTube channel come from?
Which one?
I guess all of them.
All right.
You have 2, at least 2, maybe you have 3.
I have 3 YouTube channels. So my first YouTube channel I started was actually simply called Raw Foods. And then that actually morphed into my discountjuicers.com YouTube channel where I do all my juicing demonstrations and equipment demonstrations like the vacuum blenders and like the dehydrators and like the Nutrimilk. And then I have a raw foods channel called OK Raw. And it's called OK Raw because it's okay to eat raw foods, more raw foods. I'm not going to tell anybody to be a raw foodist. It can be quite difficult and challenging, but I will encourage everybody to eat more raw fruits and vegetables in any way you guys can, whether you want to eat them whole, in salads, juice them, vacuum blend them. The more fruits and vegetables, the better. They're the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. Going to probably help you lose weight the best as well. And then my third channel is called Growing Your Greens. So that's an interesting one. I was trying to come up with like a name for my gardening channel. And I mean, I kind of lucked out on that one because, at the time I made that channel, I mean, I knew greens were very important to eat, but I wasn't as aware as I am now. And so my Growing Your Greens channel, I was like Googling like domain names. I was just trying all these different names and seeing what domain name could I get that I could also have my channel with, so I could have both of them. And Growing Your Greens was available. And that's how I ended up with Growing Your Greens. But I'm so glad I did because, I as much as I teach about growing fruits and other plants and other edible foods, I think greens should really be the basis of a person's diet. And most people just simply like neglect them. Even a lot of vegans just don't eat greens. They'll eat processed diet cheese, but they don't eat their greens.
It's the hardest thing. That's what I've been working on with people for 10 years, by any greens necessary.
Yes.
Spirit Junkie says, has John ever participated in a scientific study with cell cultures or such with his blood? Maybe your blood is special. Maybe you could just give some of it to us.
I'd like to do that. I'd be open to seeing what's going on. I mean, I got my own issues, and as much as I try to do this as best I can, I mean, I'm always looking at ways I can improve because I know I can. And maybe what I think I'm doing that's working good is not really working that good. I'm sure I could always dial it in, but we'll see.
And do you know Gary Null?
I know who he is. I've never met him.
Okay. And Vicky says, what kind of benefits have you seen from using probiotic soap?
Oh, my skin. I use pretty much probiotic soap exclusively. Marcus Rothkrantz, he made a video like why John Kohler's skin is so nice a number of years ago. And I was surprised when he wanted to make that video with me because as a child, I was actually teased because I had such bad, dry skin. People would call me lizard skin. And so then this other kid, then Marcus wants to make a video, why my skin's so nice. I'm like, I don't really think it's that nice, but all right. And then so one of the things I do is I use this probiotic soap, and it's a probiotic soap beauty bar from Japan from Dr. Ohira's, which makes a food grade probiotic. So unlike most probiotics that are a white powder, their probiotic powder is basically they go up in the mountains of Japan and harvest all these herbs, put it in little like buckets and basically ferment it, play music to it, and then they put it in these little capsules. So really it's like a probiotic food capsule versus like a white powder. And then they use that also to make their probiotic beauty soap, which is what I use. So I mean, I would hope my skin has a better microbiome. I want to do skin microbiome testing, but I haven't done that yet. But I think it works. I mean, my skin's pretty nice, but that's only one of the many things I do. I think more important than a probiotic soap is make sure you get a chlorine filter for your shower because the chlorine's killing the good bacteria. So that'd be even more important than just getting a probiotic soap. And the probiotic soap, it ain't cheap, but that's just what I come to use and what I like. I have a very sensitive skin too, so a lot of soaps will irritate me, and that doesn't seem to irritate me, and I seem to like it. So
wow, I'm so happy my audience knows who you are and likes you. They're saying such nice things, like I watch all his channels, I love this guy. And I saw another nice comment, John Kohler is so much fun. He seems to have endless energy. That's because of what he eats and drinks. And Julie says, do you have an avocado in addition to the nuts and seeds every day, or do you only have one or the other?
Depends on the day. Some days I'll have both. Some days it depends if avocados are cheap or not, honestly, because I'm pretty frugal.
That's why you called your store Discount Juices.
Oh, yeah. I always have nuts and seeds on hand, like a wide variety, and shop at the best place to get good high quality nuts and seeds. And then also, affordably priced. I always have those. And sometimes avocados are really expensive or I forget to buy them. And then I basically just won't eat them for like a week or two. And then sometimes like the Mexican market will have avocados on sale, 5 for $1, I don't know, 6 for $1. They're the small ones. Or 3 for $1 or whatever, and then and they look good, right? Because sometimes you buy them, they don't ripen up. Then I'll just buy a bunch of them. I'll buy like 12 or 20 at a time, and then I'll let them ripen up. Then I'll put them in my fridge, and they'll stay pretty good in my fridge because I also figured out how to like make food stay longer in your fridge, which I have videos about. And then I'll just use them a couple here and there. And then some days I'll like make a meal based around avocado. So it'll be like avocados with parsley or cilantro, sprouted buckwheat and garlic. I mean, that's one of my favorite dishes I make. And that I'll use like 5 avocados now, the small ones. or 3, but I won't eat that all in one sitting. I'll have that for, because I do food prep, I'll do that for a couple days, but then I won't eat other nuts and seeds on that day. So it's like, I don't like to be, I'm kind of regimented, but I'm kind of not. It's kind of like, I really like the store actually called, you have them out there, Chef AJ, called Grocery Outlet. And they call themselves opportunistic buyers. So they find what's in the market and available that's like an overabundance or near expiration date, and they'll just buy whatever because they don't always have the exact same items, and then they pass the savings on. I like to call myself an opportunistic plant-based eater because I will eat what's on sale and organic and what's in my garden, and I don't need to plan things out by recipes or buy certain foods. I could just see what I have and I'll throw something together that's going to be good.
Nice. Let's see. Oh, who's in the house is Chris Kendall, who is the one that connected us.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. And Spirit Junkie says chlorine filters will definitely change your skin. I've never even heard of that. So that's the next thing. I always learn something new on this show. Next thing I'm going to look into. Very cool. Hey, so I know you like diversity, but let's just say you're on a desert island or you got to go somewhere for like a little bit of time, and you can only take one fruit or vegetable. Which would you take? Or you could take 2 of each, one because of its nutrients and one because it's your favorite. So what would those be?
Good thing you added that in, because I was thinking, man, what one? Now, is this to sustain me or is this just for fun or what?
Well, I'm just curious what you think is the most nutrient dense fruit, the most nutrient dense vegetable, and which happens to be your personal favorite, just from taste standpoint.
So the most nutritious fruit and vegetable, or just one that I would like to eat?
Both. I'd like you to answer both ways.
Oh, so okay. So most nutritious vegetable. Man, let me see. I guess am I going for calories or just nutrition?
Well, you like phytonutrients. So which one do you think has the best profile?
Everyone is so different, so it's hard to say. And it depends on like, if I'm trying to feed my microbiome, or not. It would be something purple. So, it could be purple corn. They don't make any purple. Well, I haven't had the purple sweet corn yet, but I have a purple dent corn that I actually heat process so that I can eat it because it's so high in anthocyanins. I'm like, even if I got to heat process to get it in me, I don't really care. And then there's like wild blueberries is like an easy one, Oh, purple carrots, I'd say probably purple carrots are my favorite purple vegetable by far, like the deep, rich purple carrots. Like they're anti-cancer. Purple carrots are my favorite. Yeah.
Me too. They're the prettiest. Did you know that all carrots used to be purple until they were hybridized by the Dutch?
Yeah. The House of Orange. Yeah, there's a really good book, Eating on the Wild Side, that if you're really into like antioxidants, eating nutritiously, Eating on the Wild Side will teach you the standard varieties of fruits and vegetables that are available at the grocery store that are more like their wild counterparts that are more nutritious. Actually, that's where I've learned so many things from so many different people. So I want to thank that lady that wrote the book. And then probably for let's see, so fruits for fun, wild blueberries, and then purple carrots, and then just for fun, just to eat, I would get jackfruit. Jackfruit's got to be the orange jackfruit's got to be my favorite, even above durian and other things, or maybe chico zapotes if it's good chico zapotes. But jackfruit's just really good. I'm going to eat it later today with my friend. It was her birthday tomorrow.
It's so versatile because jackfruit can be sweet. It can be savory. You can make fake chicken dishes out of it. You can dry. There's so much you can do with jackfruit. I
only eat it sweet. If I get one that's not sweet, I'm like, crap, because I don't make whatever fake meats out of it or whatever. I just want to get them. And I like the orange ones the best when they taste like bubble gum.
Yeah, they taste like juicy fruit gum. Exactly.
Right. Well, juicy fruit gum tastes like jackfruit technically, but.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean. Can you juice moringa leaves? Can you make smoothies with them or cook with them?
I've never cooked with them. And I do have a video on YouTube that this video has a lot of views. It's actually the best way to eat moringa. And it's actually, I'm at my ex-girlfriend's house in Texas, and they have a huge moringa tree. So I was picking moringa and I juiced it with celery and pineapple. And I would encourage people to juice it. If you cook it, especially before you cut it up, you're going to lose some of the isothiocyanate content in there. So I would say vacuum blend it. I would say juice it because if you have a tree, you have so much abundance the tree is not going to miss a couple branches, juice it so that you get, and now that juice is strong. That's why you got to dilute it with like celery and pineapple to make it taste sweet. If you're hardcore, you could just do moringa shots.
Nice. Vicky says, how do you select a jackfruit? I find when you buy them cut, it's easier because then you know.
Yeah. First tip, buy them cut. If you don't know what you're doing, even me, I know what I'm doing, but sometimes I don't get a good one. But then that's also because, so number one, buy a cut one. And the easiest way to know if a cut one's ripe is put up to your nose. If it smells delicious, it's ripe. It should also be a deep color. So that's the most important thing. Now, if you're buying it uncut, then you cannot tell these things. So then for uncut, I have a whole video where I go into like a whole half hour, all the different things you should look for. But in general, the easiest things is if you're buying it uncut, is you want to smell them. Like that's the easiest. If it smells good and sweet, then it's going to be good and sweet. I mean, you want to see like there's little points on them. And if they're flattened out, that's generally a sign that it's more older. And if they're more pointy, it's younger. So it might not be as ripe. So if you want to eat them for sweetness, you want to make sure they're more flattened out. I would also go by pressure. So it gives the general pressure. It's probably generally riper. And then I would go by color. So like you don't want it super green. What I'll do when I go to the store, like the Mexican markets here had them on sale like 2 weeks ago, 50 cents a pound. And they had like all these cases. So I went through the whole display. It must have been like 20 cases. I like went through and opened up each case to just find the two I bought, and I bought the ripest two. So that the other thing is don't pick the first one that's just on top. Go through them all, and the produce guys might not like it like they don't like me, but I try to put everything back like I found it.
Nice. Marcus says, Chef AJ and John are giving me hope. Being a plant food person is very lonely in Indiana. Where in Indiana do you live, Marcus? Because my co-writer, Glenn Mercer, lives in Bloomington. Maybe there's something going on there. Who knows? I don't want to say goodbye to you because you're so interesting to talk to, but I got to do a food demo pretty soon with Dr. Joel Furman. There's an organization in New York, but I do see another question from Jenny. Do you think there's any value in the moringa powders that are on the market?
I think there is a value, but I also think because I've made my own moringa powders and I know the difference between growing good quality moringa, number one, and number two, processing the moringa in the best way possible, that I could guarantee you that nobody does what I do. So I basically dried it under vacuum so that I didn't oxidize it anyways. So I think that any way you could get more moringa into you and a greater diversity. So best would be to grow it yourself. It grows relatively easily in the warm season like we are in now. And if you otherwise would not eat it, then get a powder and incorporate some powders to get more of a diversity of different nutrients and the fibers that are in the moringa. And then, I don't know which brands are good. I did visit a farm. I made a few videos on my gardening channel where I visited moringa farms and I showed their process. And, pretty much both the farms that I visited, I would support because they process it in a good way. And if the moringa powder is coming from a third world country, you don't know what the heck they're doing or how they're processing it.
Are you moving to Hawaii?
So I hope to move to the tropics at some point in the future. My goal is to have a farm where I'm growing food and having people come in and teaching them about growing food and preparing food and all these things and having a partner to do that all with. And I'm currently lacking the partner part.
Oh, I could probably get you one. Because I always like to respect the guest because a lot of people always want to know how old the person is and if they're married. But a lot of people are asking if you're married. So
I'm single, I'm available, and I don't disclose my age. But if I look good enough to you, I'm good.
Are you a Gemini by any chance?
I'm a Taurus.
Next one. Oh, so your birthday's like right now, or you just had it?
It happened, yeah, already.
Nice. Well, I was close. Maybe May. That's so funny. Well, he didn't say he was moving yet, but people are asking if when you move, you'll continue to do videos.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to move to the tropics somewhere. Maybe Hawaii, might be Puerto Rico, or another territory in the United States is the main places I'm considering. It might be out of the country, probably not likely, but I don't know. I want to be able to find a place with my partner and start a life together is my goal, instead of having her move into my place or something. And
Yeah,
don't know.
I've always wanted to live in Hawaii. It's so expensive.
Yeah, I've been saving for a while, so I could probably be all
Everybody,
right.
everybody watching today would buy a juicer. John would be able to live in Hawaii now. So, right. So Julie says, is there any special tips on how to cut up a jackfruit?
I have videos on that. So, I mean, you can see those videos online where they just plop it open and it just falls open because they're super ripe. But if you're buying them in the store, that'll never happen. So my main technique is jackfruit is a fruit that stores really exceptionally well in your fridge. So what I do is you got the whole jackfruit. I'll cut off a section, like, so it's the long way. So like, say this is the jackfruit. I'll cut off a piece of it, just as much as I'm going to need, right? Then that other half, I will then take parchment paper, like nonstick parchment paper, and put it over it, and then put a rubber band on it, and then put it in the fridge, like face down. In my fridge, it's like 40 degrees. It'll easily stay good, like at least a week, if not longer. And then the piece I cut off, that's like, say, with like this is the piece I cut off. There's like the little core in the middle. I'll cut this straight down in half, so then you have two halves, and then I'll basically cut the core down the middle, and then I'll separate out, and then I'll keep cutting the core the long direction, and until it's small pieces. Then I'll get the knife underneath it just to carve the core out in several pieces, and then it just basically folds open. So I have pictures. I think I posted a picture on Instagram recently where I did this, and then you could just pop out each piece easily.
Do you also sprout in addition to growing all your own vegetables?
I sprout some things, but I need to be a better sprouter, and it's my goal to grow some broccoli sprouts. But I'm so busy, and I mean, you would think I'd be able to grow broccoli sprouts when I'm doing all this stuff, but this stuff's pretty easy. You know, like these peppers, I just plant them in the garden. The automatic irrigation comes on. I feed them with some compost tea once in a while, and some foliar applications of different, sea minerals and kelp and whatnot, and then they just grow without me doing anything. With sprouts, you got to rinse them every day and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know. I want to eat more sprouts, more broccoli sprouts specifically, though, and other cruciferous sprouts.
Yeah. Do you teach any classes?
Like in person?
Yeah, or just even online, like, on how you ever do like not what you eat in a day video, but like I'd love to see like your whole day from the time you wake up to go to bed, like what your life is like.
Oh, no, I haven't done one of those yet. Maybe, but I do have a lot of classes. I mean, I make 3 videos a week, Chef AJ. So I have a lot of videos. I have what I eat in a day, and I have, but yeah, I don't have a video like showing what I do all day. That'd be kind of crazy. Maybe I'll do that one of these days. The problem is I'm like, if I don't have a partner or somebody helping me, it's just incredibly difficult to orchestrate one of those videos, because then I got to set up the camera besides what I'm doing, and I'm always involved in what I'm doing, and try not to be distracted too much by the internet, and try to live in real life and live on a phone or live online, because our lives are passing us by, and I think too many people like live online too much, and we need to get back to real life. And later day I'm harvesting more greens and gonna probably make some food for my parents, and then I'm gonna plant some more plants and get back to work.
But the nice thing about online is we got to connect with all these wonderful people, and the pandemic has brought a lot of people together that at least I might not have met.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, that's why I make my videos, to spread good information out there, what I've learned, so that my life can make a difference. And hopefully for you guys that watch today, it's made a little bit of a difference. And maybe you'll start juicing. Maybe you'll look into vacuum blending. Maybe you'll just eat some more wild blueberries.
How do we get your brother on board?
Oh yeah, that's a whole discussion topic we're not even going to discuss today. I've tried to be a positive influence to him, and he knows a healthy way to eat. I mean, the funny thing is, Chef AJ, not many people know, is that he also had spinal meningitis, as I did. And he was scared too. When he came out of the hospital, he asked me, John, what do I do? I'm like, well, get out the juicer that I gave you 2 Christmases ago and start juicing. He did that. He lost weight, but then he couldn't keep it up. And then he basically just fell back into the normal trap. I mean, he's been pretty much all right. I mean, you could say he's been all right, but he's also clinically obese by his doctor and has all these aches and pains and had to get this surgery for his shoulder. And I mean, here's the thing, like, even your family members and friends you want to change, or maybe even your partner, right? You're not going to change anybody unless they want to do it. that being said, the other thing is, my brother, I'm glad to have my brother watch my videos, but at this point, we're just not talking because of, some other things that happened between us more recently that I won't disclose because that's kind of private. But yeah, I mean, everybody needs to do what they're going to do. And to me, this is important. This is a part of my life. I'm here to share with anybody that wants to learn, including my family and, friends and parents, but I'm not here to shove this down anybody's throat. My brother likes to gamble, right? He'll be gambling on sporting games and stuff. And I don't gamble. I don't gamble in that way. How I do gamble is I gamble with something more important than money, my health. I'm gambling that my juices will make a difference. I look younger than my brother. I'm my same weight. I think this is working, but do I really know? I mean, a lot of the science will concur with what I'm saying. I mean, you're going to be meeting up with Dr. Joel Furman next. So tell him I said hi, because I helped Dr. Furman put in his garden, his new retreat center place. And he's a good guy. And I believe in what he teaches, actually. So he got me to be a nutritarian raw vegan instead of just a raw vegan, right? He's one of my major influences. So I definitely appreciate him a lot. But yeah, so I just want people to, have the information if they want. And I've dove into a lot of areas that, trying to take it to the next level that most people never get into or discuss, in my opinion.
Do your parents juice?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, I gave them this juicer that's easy to clean, and it mostly sits in their house. My mom doesn't even currently blend, but what I do is I do prepare food for them. So that's why I made a video making Instapot meal for them to show people how to cook food healthfully and make a whole food, healthy, nutrient dense, plant-based meal. I pick greens from my garden and use like butternut squash and onions, and pre-cut the greens, the kales and the onions first, let them hang out a little bit to get some enzymatic reaction, make anti-cancer properties before I cook them, and put some butternut squash in there for some higher calories, and put mushrooms in there for some anti-cancer. And that's what I'll make for my parents. And I'll cut up pineapples for my mom and maybe cook them some purple potatoes because they're high anthocyanins, so they'll eat those. And I mean, that's about the extent that I could do for my parents. When they come over, I'll give them some juices, but generally my mom, my mom likes to control what my dad eats and all this kind of stuff. So I'm not getting involved with that. I just try to give them stuff that they're going to eat, because if I give them my soups that actually I would eat myself, that's like super nutrient dense, in my opinion, like they'll just give it back to me because like, oh, we didn't like it. And like, that's up to them. Like, to me, it tastes totally good, totally amazing, totally nutritious, and that's what I'm eating, but they didn't like it.
Well, Gigi says, what's the name of the easy to clean juicer you were talked about at the beginning of the show?
Oh yeah, so that's this one here. Oh, it's down there. This is the Omega NC 800. Now here's the thing, I just posted on Instagram, the NC 800 will be discontinued soon. So buy it now before it's discontinued, because the replacement is not as good. I'll just say that. I have videos on this as well. The NC 1000 is what's replacing it. It's made in China. The NC 800 is made in Korea, and it's a much better machine. So get one now if you're interested in getting one. That being said, though, later this year, maybe the end of the year, Kuvings is coming out with a 3-inch wide feed chute. So this feed chute's small, so that'd be a 3-inch wide horizontal feed chute. So then you'll have to do less pre-cutting. So I'm really looking forward to that, but hopefully it's as easy to clean as this one is. And I don't know, but I'll be getting that sample hopefully within the next month. So that's exciting.
Catitude says, can she adopt you? So I think he's still my parents, so, but he is looking for a partner to move to the tropics. So it was so fun talking to you.
I try to have fun in life. It's important. Yeah, I mean, besides my diet too, getting proper amount of sleep, doing your meditation, whatever you want to do. I mean, there's so many other aspects to health besides just the diet that I tend to focus on a lot in my life. But please understand, my life is a lot more than just my diet. I do a lot of other things as well that I would encourage everybody to look into.
Yeah, we didn't talk about exercise. Do you even need to exercise doing all the gardening?
I should probably do a little bit more exercise than I do. I carry buckets of water, and when I go shopping, like some people couldn't handle hanging out with me, but when I go shopping and if I'm going to leave the house, I'm going to go and shop at like 10 stores. So I'll stop at this store, I'll like walk across the parking lot, I'll walk around the whole store, walk around the produce section, and see what I need, then I'll go to the next store and I'll just do like 10 of those. And that's like a lot of exercise walking to every store and shopping. Not that it's like, that aerobically involved, but I could probably do some more aerobic activity. I want to get back into rollerblading, or I heard of like, was it roller skiing lately or something? I got to look into that.
Robin says, thank you for all you do, teaching gardening, raw foods, and eating a nutrient-dense diet. Jean says, John, thank you for your generosity and your passion. And I saw another nice comment somewhere. Laura says, this guy's the real deal. Love John for all the gardening and health tips. Well, thank you so much for what you do to make people in the world a healthier place.
I'm glad I could help. I'm glad I'm here and thankful I'm alive. And thank you, AJ, for doing what you're doing to, work as hard as you do to do I guess, 2 of these a day sometimes. I mean, you're really cranking them out, man. It's awesome.
And thank you. I can't wait for your review of the almond milk, because I really, like I said,
almond cow, yeah. So I'll be doing a Nutri-Milk versus almond cow. I know what I'm going to say. I'll tell you the summary. Basically, that's going to make a very watery milk, because you have to use a certain amount of water to a certain amount of nuts, and it's going to not extract all the goodness out of the nuts, in my opinion. And it won't allow you to do, like the nut butters, which, to me are more valuable, because you can make a nut butter, then like I did in one of my videos, you can make nut butter, then add in like dried wild blueberries to it to basically now have a high antioxidant nut butter.
Yeah, because I wondered I know that the almond cow is so much cheaper, but then like, what do people do? They just throw away the pulp?
I mean, so I recently made coconut milk, and when I make coconut milk, I'll blend in the blender, and then I'll put it through the juicer to extract it instead of using a nut milk bag. Sometimes I'll use a nut milk bag. And then actually the pulp that came out, I dehydrated, actually one time in the dehydrator and one time in the sun or in the shade outside. And then I basically made almond flour. So now I could use that almond flour in my recipes, for extra fiber.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much, John. And thank you so much, Chris, for introducing us, even though we briefly met maybe 20 years ago, but for connecting us.
All right. Thank you, AJ.
My pleasure. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time, when we will be celebrating the birthday of Dr. John McDougall, because he is my guest along with his wife, Mary. Thanks again, John. Happy